If you know a thing or two about music for games, you probably know that dynamic or adaptive music that changes according to the player's actions, has almost become a new standard for music in modern games. The core challenge of creating adaptive music for a game often boils down to a trade-off between reactivity and cohesion. You want the music to fit every moment of the gameplay as well as possible, while also being convincing and making sense as a piece of music. Those two do not always align, and that sometimes forces you to make difficult decisions.
Welcome, I'm Pete Froggs and I write music that helps indie games resonate emotionally with players.
In this video, I'm going to present the first project on which I experimented with adaptive music, a game called Boogeymouse, created in 48 hours during a game jam. As such, it's not going to be the most complex example of adaptive music out there, but rather a demonstration of how even a simple music system can be effective. I'm going to showcase the dynamic music system as it exists in the finished game, break down my process for creating all the music tracks, and show you how you can create a similar system using FMOD. The premise of the game is very simple. You're a mouse in a child's room, and your goal is to collect these 2D character figurines while being chased around by ghosts, which are these big glowing balls of light. The catch is that there are actually 4 different realities that you can transition to using these mouse hole portals, and in each reality, one ghost will be chasing you while the other stays still. Because the ghost will eventually catch up to you, you're incentivized to change dimensions whenever one of them gets too close. This is where the adaptive music part comes in. To make the experience more fun, we decided that we would give each reality a distinct look and sound. Here's how that breaks down. First, the home reality. This is the one you start in, and it basically looks like the real world. It's also different from the other 3 in that the ghosts won't be chasing you, but as a trade-off, you can't collect any figurines to progress the game. Then the Tron reality with its futuristic neon blue color. The old-timey reality with muted sepia tones emulating an old film. And finally, the glitch reality with psychedelic swirling colors. Before getting to writing any music for the game, the dev team and I decided on a plan for the music system. I would create 4 music tracks, one for each reality, and at any given time, you will only be able to hear the track that corresponds to the reality you're in. To keep things consistent and allow for frequent switching from one music track to another, all 4 tracks would be based on the same underlying composition, meaning the harmony, melody, and tempo would remain the same across all 4. That way, switching from one track to another wouldn't break the flow of the music. If this sounds confusing, don't worry, it will make more sense once I show you how it works in detail. I decided to create the music for the home reality first, so I could use it as a starting point to create the other music tracks. The composition itself is very simple. It's 32 bars long, which can be broken down into an A section and a B section of 16 bars, and both of these sections consist of an 8-bar phrase that's repeated with some minor variations. Simplicity is actually important here. I wanted the music to be easy to make sense of in anticipation of the frequent switching from one version to another that would happen during gameplay. For the home reality music, I decided to go for a film score sound inspired by classic fantasy films. It's familiar enough to feel like home, but magical enough to convey how different it is to explore a child's room through the eyes of a mouse. The melodies are played by bells, accompanied by strings, orchestral percussion, and the occasional brass. Next, I created the music for the Tron reality. I immediately knew that synthwave would be the way to go to match the retro-futuristic visuals. Instead of strings, I used synths for the chords and chord stabs, and for the melody I used synth bells for the A section and a synth lead for the B section. Then I of course added some 80s inspired drums, a rolling bass line, and a whole lot of sidechain on just about all the melodic elements. Next was the old-timey reality. Out of all the tracks, this one is the most minimalistic, which I think suits this kind of aesthetic. I used the same melody and chords, but had them play on lo-fi sounding keys and bells. all 4 patches are coming from Omnisphere, but I added some vinyl crackle, pitch wobble, and saturation on top with RC20 to really sell the old movie feel. And as a final analog touch, I added a radio static sample to smooth out the transitions from the A to the B sections and from the B section back to the top. And that leaves the music for the glitch world. This was definitely the one I had the most fun creating. For this one, I literally sampled the music from the home reality, added a bunch of effects to it, then chopped and recombined it up to make it sound glitchy, then added even more effects to it, distortions, bit crushers, all kinds of multi-effects. I basically threw everything I had at it and kept the bits that sounded cool. Then to add to the hectic feeling, I added some breakbeats for section A and a psychedelic trance kick and bass combo for section B. And that covers the music creation side of things. Now let's look at how it works in the game. During the game jam, the music was implemented by the developers directly in Unity. To show you how it works, I have recreated the same system in FMOD. It's very simple. All 4 tracks are laid out in the same timeline, and using magnet regions and a parameter with 4 different values for the 4 different realities, you can very easily control which track is playing at a given moment. If you want to create a similar system, just make sure you select a relative offset in the transition conditions for the magnet regions. Otherwise, the track you transition to will start playing from the beginning instead of picking up where the previous track left off. This is how things work in the finished game, but I wanted to see what else I can do in FMOD to make things flow a bit better. The drawback of the system as it is now is that the transitions from one track to the next are instantaneous. Here it works because the tracks have all been designed for that purpose, but it can sound a little jarring. So I created a slightly more involved version of that music system. While watching a gameplay video closely, I noticed that there was a short gap between the moment you first touch a portal and the moment you land in a new reality. I decided to use this small gap to create a transition, so I added transition timelines for each track in FMOD and made it so that when you go from one reality to another, the 2 tracks overlap slightly. Then, to further smooth out the transition, I created a whoosh sound effect and placed it inside the transition timelines, so it plays while you're going from one reality to another. And here's how the transitions sound like with these changes. Thank you for watching this game audio breakdown. I hope you found it informative and that it inspired you to experiment with adaptive music in your game. I'll catch you in the next one.